Okay, yeah, product topology and subspace topology. Definition. Let X and Y be topological spaces. So the product topology. There's a general product topology that is in a few sections, but the product topology on Cartesian product X and Y is the topology having as basis the collection B of all sets of the form U cross V, where U is open in X and the V will be open in Y. So where U is open in X and V is open in Y. Okay. So our theorem is if we have a basis, so if script B is a basis for the topology, of X, and we have another collection C is a basis for the topology of Y, then we can create essentially another basis so that the collection script D, which we are going to take the B cross C's for all of our B's in the basis for X, and our C's in the basis for Y. And this new set is collection is a basis for the topology of X, Y, X, Y. So the example we established standard topology on R, which ended up being the order topology. So we had that the standard topology on R, that ended up just being the order topology. And then now when we're going to have a different standard topology for R2. So the product, they're going to say that they're going to find that the product of this topology with itself is going to give what we call the standard topology on R cross R or just R2. And so then there, for the basis, we could say that collections of all products, and since we're on the reals, we can use these open intervals. So if I have A, B, and I take that with C, D, the collection of these products of open intervals, or basically just sets that are open in R, in R serve as a basis. So this is the basis for standard topology, which makes sense because I think the basis for just a ordered topology was all the open intervals. Basis for the topology of R2. Okay, so they're going to, the strategy is to prove this other theorem. He's going to define projection maps now, and then we're going to do these projections to give a sub-basis definition, basically.
Okay, so like closest point, is that what he's saying?
No, these are, so they're like the P maps that take the Cartesian product to either X or Y, and then it basically drops down onto the, yeah.
Just wipes that one dimension. Okay, yeah.
Because then you can do one for the U's, and then you'll do one for the V's, and then you can take that intersection to be the U and V. Or rather U cross V. So we can define P1 of X cross Y to X. We're going to be defined by simply P1 XY gives X. And then we'll say P2 X cross Y to Y is going to be defined by P2 XY gives Y. And from here, we are going to say that the maps P1 and P2, we call these are called projections of X cross Y onto its first and second. So first for this one and second factors.
Okay, factors, interesting.
So, I haven't read the generalized version of this yet, but I suspect it'll be a...
wonder what word they were going to use.
Because I know he's going to have to do this to tuples and generalize it, so we'll see. It's probably easy because he'll just say n tuple or n factor or whatever. So you kind of noted some interesting things. So if we have that U is open in X, so if we have a topology on X and U is open in X, then what we have is if we take the inverse, basically, the inverse image of U, you get U, let's set U together with Y in X cross Y. And this U cross, since U is open in X, then U cross Y should be also open in X cross Y. And then in a similar way, if you take the Y version, so if V is open in Y, then we have that P, the inverse image of P2 from V is going to just give you X cross V. Hey. And that's going to be open in X cross Y as well. And so put together, since both of these are going to be open, we have that the inverse image of U intersecting the inverse image of V from P2 is taking U cross Y intersecting X cross V, and that intersection is just U cross V. So they were going to use this projection substitution in as hardware for a proof. And so the visualization of this, so if I take, so if this is my set X, so all the stuff in X, here's all the stuff in the Y. And so U is open in the top, in X, so V is going to be open in Y. So here's some open U. And here's going to be some open V. And if I think about the way that if this is taking X, Y to X, and then if I go backwards, so if I take this and I try to see what it's going to come out, it's going to be this cross product U cross Y. So U kind of like this. It's going to take up
Forever, yeah.
So this is represented by our P1 inverse of U, inverse image of U, which is the U cross Y. And then the same way, we can do the same thing in this direction. So this goes over here, going over here. And so I'll try to do the angles the other way. So this is now the inverse image P2 for V, which is the X cross just V. And then this specific intersection, so all we're really saying is that that's how we know for certain this is U cross V. It's a visualization of this stuff in here, that's the intersection between these two regions, depending on your open sets U and V, is just U cross V, which is found by intersecting P1 inverse U, P2 inverse V. Cool. So we can use that in the next proof. So here's the theorem. The theorem is going to be that U and V be open sets in X and Y topological spaces, respectively. So the collection, and we're going to define script as, it's going to be, we're going to take the P1 inverse image with U for all those U's, and the union with P2 inverse image of V for all of the V's. This is a subbasis for the product topology for our product. So we're gonna do this with we're gonna first show that the topology is finer than the other one, and then the second topology is then finer than so then if they're both finer than each other, they have to be the same. So we're gonna let T be, this is going to represent just the regular product topology. So this will denote the product topology on X cross Y. And then we're gonna let the T prime be the topology that is then generated by our collection. Because if they end up being the same thing, then this is a basis for the product topology. And we can start, we're gonna first show that this is gonna basically be finer than the product topology. So because every element of our collection S, every single one of those belongs to the topology. And so do arbitrary unions of finite intersections of elements of S. And so that's going to be more than what the product, and we have giving that our T prime from topology generated from this basis then would be finer than the product topology. But now we can show also that the product topology is actually finer than the topology generated by this as well. So on the other hand, and this is where we'll be able to invoke this work, every basis element, and those basis elements U cross V for the topology T. I guess I'll specify that since there's two things that are supposed to be the same thing for the topology T. This is a finite. So U cross V presented like this is not an intersection, and that's why we did it like that. So it's an intersection between those two sets. So this is a finite intersection of the elements of S, which is why we defined the collection of S to be alluding to the projections that we made. And then we can basically cite the work we did, since U cross V can be understood to be P1 inverse U intersecting P2 inverse V. So in that case, we have that the T is actually finer than T prime. And then we say, since T is finer than T prime and T prime is finer than T, then the topologies are the same. So that's the work that we do on product topology for just X cross Y, and then we return to generalize. That's my favorite from this week.
Yeah, it's a nice tool.
Because then it's easy to understand and not, like, since these can be any opens in X, then visually you can see where it's going to take care of everything, yeah. So it's a little bit easier than the dictionary order. They tried to represent the dictionary order with open sets, and it worked if you convinced yourself that the picture worked. Well, that one kind of speaks for itself. Okay, so now we can talk about subspace topology. And then this does relate back to, we'll relate it to the product topology and also the order topology. And he motivates the discussion that way so that you define convex as being understood to be a necessary property so that you can basically inherit a topology onto your subspace if you have convex. Because the general case is not true. Oh, sweet, okay. So we'll first start, and we're gonna let X be a topological space with topology T. And so if Y is a subset of X, so Y is not necessarily open in X, but if Y is a subset of X, the collection T sub Y, where we're going to intersect this subset of X with all of the open sets in our topology. This actually forms a topology. So this is a topology, not on X, but on Y. And we call this the subspace topology. And so with this topology, we would call Y a subspace of X. So Y is called a subspace of X.
I'm not seeing. Are you going to get to the case when Y is closed? Are you going to...
Yeah, well, it's generally not because he's going to construct essentially that when Y is in itself an open set in X, then you have, where does that go? I think he's constructing it so that you can talk about Y as being a subspace of X. Because there's a lemma that will prove where if Y is a subspace of X, and then if you have an open set of U, then that's also an open set of X.
Yeah, I believe that. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And then we're going to let, so its open sets, yeah, so it's as in the Y, so the open sets of the Y. Consist of all intersections of open sets of X with Y. Essentially, it's just saying this again, but with the words. Okay, so we can essentially establish that the T sub Y is going to be a topology because we can get the empty set by intersecting the subset with the empty set. And we can get the subset back, Y, by intersecting the subset with X. So we have empty and the set itself. In this case, the set is the subset. And for finite intersections, we essentially want to show that if I take finite intersections of Y intersects, various open sets in X, then that in itself is also going to be open in Y. So I can take U1 intersecting the subset and then intersect this an arbitrary number of times to UN intersecting the subset. But in here, this is the same as if I intersect U1 to UN intersecting 1. And the reason we want to write it like this is because we know by definition that all the UIs are going to be open in X. And since they are open in, essentially that means they're in T and they satisfy, they're part of this collection. So whatever this intersection is always going to be in the topology. And arbitrary unions we can get, if we take an indexing set so alpha and j, for each U alpha intersecting Y, that's the same thing as if I took the union of all of the U alphas and then intersected it with Y. I can take the alpha and j with U alpha, and then take this and intersect it with Y. But then again, because X is a topological space with T, so this is open and it still satisfies the definition. So we have empty, we have set itself, finite intersections, arbitrary unions, it's a topological space.
Y can be closed then.
Yes. In X.
Right. closed in X.
Because it's like, for example, you could take, if you had like the reals, so you could take y is 0, say like 0 to 1, closed. That would still work. It wouldn't preserve the order topology, but it's still a subspace topology. Yeah.
Kind of viewing 0, 1 closed as the entire real line itself.
Yeah.
Is how it can be open and closed at the same time.
I think I'm gonna go eat.
Okay.
It's nice to see you. I'm missing too many definitions to get the full picture.
That's okay.
But I understand the notation, so I can.
That's good.
Yeah. I spent the first 2 years of my undergrad being able to comfortably read this textbook, basically. Okay, so we'll prove 2 little lemmas here. So lemma if B is a basis for the topology.
Thanks for helping with the calculus case back here.
Trying to.
Yeah.
I need to see them and send them an email and cancel tomorrow because apparently they have engineering seminar.
Oh,
And collection y, which we take to be basis elements intersecting with y. This will be a way we can get a basis for, again, the subspace topology on y. Okay. So given an open set in X. Oh, I should say that it's open. Given U, which is open in X, and also if we choose an element in this intersection of U intersecting E subset, we can choose an element, one of the basis elements, such that y is in B, and then that B is a subset of U. Whether or not it's actually U itself or less than, or is smaller than is, that can change, but it doesn't really matter. Because then y is in B intersects y, which is a subset of U intersects y. And then that's how we need to show. So it follows that y is a basis for the subspace topology.
So does U intersect Y have to be non-empty? Because at the very beginning we have little y is in the intersection. What if U and Y don't overlap?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So basically, if there does not exist an element that you can put in here, well, because but we defined the basis to take basis element from the topology of X with Y.
Okay, so the base.
So it can't be empty because X would have to be empty, or Y would have to be empty.
Right. And then it's can't happen.
Well, it could, but we just haven't defined it. If we're citing well, I guess you could have it in topological space, but if we took the topology where we define subset of X intersecting all of the open sets in X, It does accommodate the trivial case where everything's just empty, but that's not interesting.
So I'm just wondering if y, so is it an if, like if little y is in the intersection, we can choose.
Yes. So this is like the if. So we're assuming this.
Right. Given u is open end, if y is in the intersection, then we can choose. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is what happens when I stray away from my symbols. The English is ambiguous. I'll have to go back maybe next week and do it symbolically again. Okay, and then the other one is we can say, this one's a little bit more important in my opinion, but if we have y, and let's say y be a subspace of x. So if we have u is open in y, and y, the subset, is one of the open sets of x, so it's open in x, then u is also open in x.
Good. I believe that one.
Some of them are easier to believe than others. So since u is, the proof is pretty much just stating, well, look, so since u is open in y, then that means we have that u is y intersecting some v, where that v, for some v that is open in x, and that's guaranteed by the way we've defined the subspace topology. So it's just definitional, and then since y and v are both open in x, the y being open in x by hypothesis, v being open in x by definition, then so is the intersection. Because finite intersections are also open. So that one's pretty straightforward. Okay. And then we get some examples. Because now it's going to extend basically the relationship between your subspace topologies to products, at least between two topological spaces and the order topologies. I think I realized why the idea for the basis, at least, was so attractive to me at first, was because it allows for there to be an overlap at the end points there. And maybe I should investigate bases that basically do like on a number line to do like
Right.
like closed sets that back up to each other where the endpoints are the same.
Well, you did have several discussions around that issue,
Yeah.
didn't we?
So I'll keep my eye out basically as I go through, because it seems like it would be something somebody might have already done and given a name.
Well, since each of those is
Closed interval.
it's a subspace topology, because it can be closed within the
Yeah.
larger open one.
They couldn't be open sets
Right.
because so
Yeah.
I think it's possible to find at least to find either, because it would be interesting. It would be interesting to extend it to a topological space structure, but
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a case now that
right.
you said that 0, 1 can be a subspace.
The only
even though
trick
it's closed.
The only trick, though, that I don't want it to become a circular argument, be like, well, why did you motivate this construction and define your entire like thing around specifically closed intervals that tie up into each other? I'm like, well, because then I'm having to invoke the physics again. I don't want to have to invoke the physics, and so that's the only thing that's stopping me from like fully committing to that. Because then I might do all this work just to say that I had to assume that we need a well-ordered. Anyway, so I gotta figure out if I want to go all the way back and preclude well ordering and then give in the case that you are ordered that it happens, or just start with an ordered set and then construct from there. Because an ordered set would be fine, I think, so long as it's not explicitly R. But anyways, I have winter break to worry about that. If A, so the product topology is the one that's intuitive. Like you'll inherit the structure. So if A is a subspace of X and B is a subspace of Y, then the product topology on the subspaces A cross B is going to end up being the same as the topology wait, hold on. Is my grammar correct here? Wait, the product topology on A cross B is the same as the topology A cross, yeah, because A cross B is inherits as a subspace of the original product. So here's an example of when this doesn't necessarily happen. So that's true for products, that you can basically just take subspaces of each of the things in your products, and then wow, the product of your subspaces happens to take on the same topology. But for ordered sets, it's not necessarily true. And so here's a counterexample to basically prove that this theorem would not apply to the subspace topology. As we could state, okay, let me take Y as 0 to 1, a closed interval in R, and in the subspace topology. Because we know that R is ordered, it's going to be on the ordered topology. And so the basis is going to be all sets of the form. So by definition earlier, it was take your subset, intersect it with, and so I want open sets, AB, that are going to intersect with my subset, Y, from R. Or I could have just put 0, 1. I'll just say, or AB intersects 0, 1. Where each of the AB are then the open, are open in R, which is like the X in our definitions. So there are 4 cases though. So if we're going to take this with real specifically, I need to account for if I have AB intersecting Y, I could have different things happening. First thing that could happen is that could just be the interval itself.
Right.
And it could be the interval itself if we have that both A and B are contained in Y. But if, so it's possible, so it's like on the number line, I'll just write it out.
In the middle,
So if this
one
is
end at the other end.
A, B. So we might not have this one inside of Y. So we would start at 0 though, and then go, so we can have 0 going up to whatever B is, if only B is in what we choose for Y. So
Okay, that's what I was missing.
yeah, and then B, I'll just do it the other direction. So then I can take A open with 1 at the top if B is outside. So if only A is in Y. And then you could end up actually just getting back Y or the empty set. Y or empty. if neither of them, A, B, are not in Y. And so in this case, we only have open subsets. Basically, we have open sets if A, B, and Y. But in these cases, we can say that each of these sets are open in Y. So they're open in the subspace topology, but having the half open intervals 0 to B and A to 1, they are not open in the order topology for R. So the subspace topology is, and the order topology are not necessarily the same. Which is different. Products, that's always going to inherit the same topology, but order topology is not. But there is a condition in which you do get, there is a condition where you can inherit the order topology, and that's where that's at least how he motivates the definition for convex.
So the problem is the closed part.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what I was like, could it be closed? Because there might be some issues.
Yes. Okay. Oh, and these I noted them just because I feel like he's going to use them as examples later on, so that we're on the same page of what notation I'm using. If I is going to be 0, 1, then the set I cross I in specifically dictionary order topology will be called the ordered square. And then he came up with a notation I naught 2. So if that comes up in an example later on, that's what that is. And then, okay, so here's convex.
And is that an O or a 0?
That's a 0, yeah. Yeah, I thought it would make more sense to make it O, but it's what it is. Given an ordered set X and a subset Y subset X. Let's say that this is convex in X if for each pair of points, well, okay, he notes that A less than B in Y. So A less than B of Y, the entire interval A, B of points of X lies in Y. So basically it's what you brought up in the example, is we're eliminating the cases where you have half open. And as an aside, if we're talking about now convex, when we did the order topology discussion for reals, and we were talking about intervals and rays. So intervals and rays in some ordered set X are also convex. And X. Okay, so last thing for today is this theorem. So that X be an ordered set in the order topology. And we're going to also let Y just be a subset of X. That is convex. X. Then, now it's going to be like the product topology. So then the order topology on Y is the same as the topology Y inherits as a subspace of X.
That's interesting. So he doesn't have to talk about openness, he just talks about convexity to fix it.
Yep. Which I mean is
pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. I think he did that just because he does allow for the discussion at least of not like have the half open stuff.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So then, and I was trying to, I had to, and when I saw convex, I tried to make it geometric, you know, like with shapes and stuff. But I was having a hard time reconciling that with, I think I might need more time just to sit with the idea before I see a connection between why we call both the convex polygons convex and.
No, I think that's right, because typically you're given the classic example is the kidney shape, right? That they always draw kind of this thing as non-convex because you have A and B, and one of them is less than the other, and then the ray between them goes outside, so it's not convex.
Oh, I see. So you have to travel outside of that.
Yeah. So if you go from one place to the other, and somewhere in your journey.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in your journey here, you go outside.
Your points outside of. Okay, so then that's where it forces. Like so, when you have a convex, like
right.
So to speak, because then if it's all equal. Oh, okay. So then the convex polygons are basically giving regions in R2 under the order topology. Oh, that's probably what they do actually. Now I think about it. Yeah. Because if you give the standard topology on R2 in dictionary order, because that's taken R and R. Granted, it wouldn't necessarily be well. Would you take? It wouldn't be an interval like A B, but it would be like it'd be a product
equivalent. Yeah. So this is more general than the pictures. But
yeah. So this could be applied to markers.
Yes.
And in that case, because that's where all they draw the funny little pictures with the shape shifting and. Okay, no, that's cool. Yeah, neat. Yeah, so I'll probably work on. They switch those over to limit points and closing and stuff like that, and then that's the section, and then we're on to continuous functions.
Okay.
So I don't know how long. It's a very, very chunky section, so I might just do all the limit point stuff and construct it so that I can spend a whole hour on functions.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.